Hello, everyone. Can you see and hear me? I hope so. Hi, Julie. How are you? So, hopefully, you can see and hear me. I am excellent. I am Heather. I am here from Beating Dreams, and I am teaching more of the Wednesday tutorials now. So, you probably should get used to seeing me on Wednesdays, and our fearless leader Allison will be on later when we record our podcast for tonight, which is going to be very interesting. So stay tuned. Tonight I'm going to work on, I love buttons, and I know a lot of you also love buttons. I'm going to work on a button necklace that is just essentially a little tassel made out of chain and buttons, and you can do all kinds of other things with it. And Julie, I'm doing great. I am happy to see all of you tonight. So I am going to begin by talking about what we're going to use for this. So I've got chain. I have 2 pieces of chain that are the same length to make the middle or the necklace part. And then I have 3 shorter pieces of chain that are 3 different lengths for the tassel part. You want to make sure that you have wire that will fit into your chain. I love buttons. I don't mean to collect buttons, but I definitely do collect buttons, and it's been that way my whole life. I have awesome memories of going through my grandmother's button box, and I actually got the mother of pearl button box, so all these beautiful antique and vintage mother of pearl buttons. And inspired by Gamma's button box, I'm going to use some antique or vintage mother of pearl buttons. And this is just, you don't have to do this at the back or as an element if you don't want to, but I'm also going to use some little pearls to attach the mother of pearl beads, because I love pearl and mother of pearl, and they are mama and daughter, and so we like that about them. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with some wire wraps. And for longtime viewers of the stream, none of this is going to be new or different. It's just a different way of putting things together. And yes, Sharon, absolutely. We had this huge box of poker chips and other game parts. Like the game itself had been lost, but we had like at least 3 different sets of poker chips. There were buttons in there, no coins. No, that's not true. There were sometimes Canadian coins. All right, so I've got round nose pliers and chain nose pliers and a second pair of chain nose pliers because I have tennis elbow, and this helps keep my tennis elbow from hurting as much using a second pair of pliers, because it turns out that pinching and gripping this much use completely different muscles, or to a completely different extent at least. And then of course I have wire cutters. So I'm going to begin by doing a wire wrap. So I'm going to put my wire in my round nose pliers, bend the wire away, loosen my grip with my pliers, rotate up, bring the wire back over the top of the pliers down to meet the other wire. And at this point, I have a shape that looks like a pelican head. So if you see that shape during this process, then you're doing it right, not wrong. And I'm going to hold both wires, loosen my grip, rotate my round nose pliers all the way up. I'm going to complete my loop by pushing the short wire away from me underneath the pliers, cheating toward the tips of the pliers. And those directions work no matter which handedness you have. So now I've got a loop, and I want to add this to my chain. And the chain has thoughts about whether it wants to allow this. I did confirm before stream that this wire does fit through the chain. It's just The chain is being the chain has not consented yet, and so we have to respect the chain. But, there we go. All right, so I have clicked my chain into place on my little loop. I'm going to hold my loop with one pair of chain nose pliers, and you can wrap with your fingers, or you can do what I'm doing. Use a second pair of chain nose pliers to hold onto that little end. And you want to wrap at least 1.5 times around. I am going to wrap 2.5 times around because that's going to pretty much match what I do on the other side. Then once I'm done with that, I'm going to trim that off, that end off, and smooth it down with my chain nose pliers. Note, I'm not just squishing, I am applying a little bit of pressure and rotating my pliers in the same direction as the coil of my wire wrap. Now, on the other side of this, I could just absolutely do a second wire wrap, which is how I'm going to put on the clasp if we have time for putting on clasps tonight. I have a time schedule since we're going to be online doing the podcast soon, but I do want to make sure that I have this wire wrapped. And if you are not good at meeting the ends of your wire wrap, the hack is to add a bead. Also, I just really like how adding a bead kind of does two things here. It camouflages actually, you know what? I did that wrong. So I am going to start over, and there's a whole reason. No, I didn't. I did that fine. No, I didn't. Sorry. I don't need help. I need a new brain. But this is an easy fix because I only made one loop. So I have this button for my center. And the reason I'm using this button for my center is because I'm going to have one wire wrap coming out one side and one coming out the other side. And then in the center, I'm going to have, that's where my tassel goes. So I'm actually, instead of starting out with a loop, I'm going to start out by doing part of a top drilled wire wrap on the button itself. So I've put my wire through and I've crossed the ends over each other. So I've got a short end in front and a long end in the back. And then I'm going to grip my long end. I'm going to bend it straight out from the button. So I have what looks like a little house top. That's what one of our customers called it. And I like that name. So it's evocative and descriptive of exactly what look you want there. I'm going to carefully grip both wires where they cross, so I have control over the wire. That's very important. And here I am going to wrap again, my 2.5 times, and then trim. And smooth the end down. And now I'm going to add my pearl back. Because I did my thing that I wanted to do, even if I didn't do it first thing. That is okay. So now I've got a wire wrap and I've got a pearl. And I like using the pearls on this project for a couple different reasons. One is we don't have any wire in the store that's exactly the same color as this chain. And the bigger the expanse of wire is, the more obvious it is that I tried to match and couldn't. So if I put something on there, such as a pearl, it gives me a little bit of misdirection to make it look like, oh, I did that on purpose. I really wanted to have my wire not quite match. The other thing is it just makes it easier so you don't have to match up your ends perfectly because they're not gonna be end to end. They're going to end around a little pearl. Now this is a rice-shaped freshwater pearl, which is why it's so nice and irregular. You can use absolutely any bead if you want to use a bead here. You don't have to use a bead here. You absolutely can just wire wrap it. So I followed all the steps that I did at the first part of the stream before I cut it apart, and I made a loop. So now, once again, I'm going to have to ask my chain for consent and attach these two. So I've fed my chain onto my wire, and I'm just going to click it into place. You want to make sure it is hanging freely in the loop that you made, because if it is not hanging freely in the loop that you made, then you are going to have sadness when you realize later that your chain is not actually connected. All right, so I've got my loop in my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to use my fingers in this case because it's so long, and I'm just going to wrap down to meet that bead. And once I've gone down to meet the bead, I'm going to trim and smooth that end down. When you are doing any cutting with wire cutters, you want to make sure that the blade side of the wire cutters is closest to your wire that you want to cut. So always notice when I do cuts, I'm going to have the very convex section facing outward toward you all. All right, so that's one side of my necklace. Now I'm going to do the other side. Once again, I'm going to start with the loop on the button. So you want to, or the hole on the button, you want to make sure on this that you have your wire through the opposite loop, because we're doing kind of a triangle here, and we want it to hang with a center. If you don't use the two facing holes to do this, then there's not going to be a center for the tassel part. So make sure you're using the correct section of your button. And then I'm going to bend that top up, make my little house top. I'm going to hold on to where my wires cross over, or to have control over where my wires cross over. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are holding on top of that. You are just holding so when you move things, they don't move independently of you. So I've got my end trimmed. I'm going to smooth that down. And I'm going to put on another pearl. Pull that all the way down. Now you absolutely can use a smaller piece of wire. I am definitely going to, I tend to cut off a longer piece of wire for myself simply because I like to act like I have some sort of crazy good wire that I'm working with every time I do a wire wrap, and it's not true. This is just basic brass wire and antique brass plated chain. So if I have a whole bunch of wire left over as scrap, oh no, it's really going to be okay. But when you are crafting or making jewelry with more expensive wire, like sterling silver and gold filled, then this is a much more efficient way of using your wire. So this is my preferred method when I am making a more expensive piece instead of a more fun piece. So, an awesome, hi Keiko, and that's fun. There are a lot of cool things you can do with buttons, absolutely. So now since this is a vintage button and there might be a little bit of differences in the shapes, because some of these are more loved than others, and some of them, like this one, and I particularly chose this one because it has been loved enough that there's a divot in it, and I like that. I like the charm of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just deciding which way is up and which way is down. So I think that this side is down because the wires like to go this direction more. And by more, I mean they make more of a V. So I'm going to respect their wishes and make my little tassel at the bottom here. So once again, don't let me forget because I'm trying to do it again. We're going to start with our wire in our button, and we're just going to cross the wires, bend the long end up, grip where you have control over both wires, wrap. Now if this were a traditional top rolled wrap, I would only wrap 1.5 times and then I would stop, because you don't want to have a long coil of wire, because that creates, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, and it also creates a long vulnerable spot because this is not very large wire. So the longer your wire wrap is, the more vulnerable that particular connection would be. So if you do not want a potential weak spot, then you want to make sure that your coil is as short as possible. All right, so I've got my pearl on, and I did actually have a specific direction I wanted these pearls to face. I like the little, they're almost like teardrops. They're rice pearls, so they're very irregular in shape, but each one of them has a pointier side and a less pointy side. So in this particular case, I wanted to make sure that the pointy side faced up. If that is something that is not going to bother you or whatever, then don't worry about it. That's not a big deal. Okay, so here we want to think about the directionality of our loop. We want our loop to actually be in the same plane as the button, which means I'm going to place my round nose pliers on top of my pearl looking at the side of this whole piece. See what I've done there? Because this first bend will tell us the directionality of our loop. So I have a loop ready to receive some chain. And I'm going to cut this off with a little bit of room left. And the reason for that is because I am going to do my wire wraps on these guys, and then I am going to attach them and adjust the lengths of my chains as needed. So I'm going to do the same thing, same kind of wire wrap where I put my wire through my button. Try not to knock everything else over. That is currently successful, but we'll see. It's early days. Now, I do want to pay attention to how much wrap I do this time, because I'm not putting a pearl on top of this. I'm just doing wire. So I don't want to go around as many times. This is when I want to go around just 1.5 times. And if I want these to meet up, then I want to be sure that I am facing the little end of the coil of wire that I just made. And because I'm trying to do this far away from me, in somebody else's light, my coil wasn't as great as it could have been, so I can fix that because chain nose pliers are magical with wire. It's really great. All right, so I've put these in order. Because this is my big button, this is going to be my longest piece on my little tassel. I'm going to do a tassel of 3 tonight, but you can do absolutely any number. I like odd numbers because odd numbers have a center and our eyes really enjoy having a center where they get to rest. But you are not required to do anything. There are no rules here. This is about buttons and having fun. So if you are using buttons and you are having fun, then you are doing exactly all of the directions I am giving you tonight. All right, so I've got one piece of chain with a button on, and I think this is going to get cut down significantly, but I just wanted to give myself plenty of extra. And then you don't have to do this. Sometimes I like playing with size as well. This particular button I picked because it's pretty on both sides, and this is how you can tell it's an actual mother of pearl button rather than a faux mother of pearl button, because you can actually see the parts of the shell itself. You can tell that this is a mother of pearl rather than faux mother of pearl button because one side is less shiny than the other side, and it's worn down the way shell would wear down, not the way plastic would wear down. So just little things to pay attention to when you're looking at old buttons. Some may not be as pearl-like as you originally thought. And once again, I'm doing same type of wire wrap. I'm going to just do this over and over and over again today until I finish an entire pretty necklace. Now, I am using curb chain today. That is a specific type of chain that you've seen a lot, and I'm not going to be able to zoom in on it super close because we have technology limitations here. But you see how the links of the chain interlock and then just sort of all face essentially the same direction rather than on a cable chain where you've got a loop in this direction and then a loop in this direction. It goes back and forth. So curb chain adds an extra challenge that you want to be aware of when you are using curb chain, and that is when you hang your curb chain, it may not want to face perfectly forward. So I am going to play with my directionality of my wire wraps once I get this in a tassel. Just a little bit tonight on the stream so you can see what I do. I might mess with it a little bit more off the stream when I can get it closer to my ancient eyes and show you what is happening. But this one, I particularly enjoy this button because it can go either direction and they're both front as far as I'm concerned. All right, so one more. And I picked this one because, again, you can see the shell on the back, and also it's just so delicate and so stinking cute. And I always love stinking cute. It's one of my things. Not stinky, that's different. Things can be stinky and cute. Witness most baby animals who have their moments of stinky. And all skunks, stinky and cute. When you are cutting, you also want to make sure to be very careful that you're not cutting the wire around which you are coiling or the the loop if you have previously made a loop. Here's my tiny piece of chain. There it is. All right. So for you local people, if you are a button person, you may or may not want to know that there is a glorious button store in Dallas, and I'm not allowed to go there, but some of you might be allowed to go there. Depends on probably your ability to restrain yourself in any way, because I'm actually quite terrible at restraint. So I don't go to Benno's Buttons, but boy, yeah, there's a whole button store. It's terrible, Julie, and that just means you need to come visit us. Yes. Julie said, "What?" And she's not wrong. All right, so this is facing backwards of the direction I want it to face. So I'm turning it around. It did used to be in walking distance of Beating Dreams, but not since I started working here, which is probably for the best, again, for me. Yeah, what means this word restraint? It means someone else has to hold my wallet, or I need to be in restraints is actually what it means for me. I think this is a little long. I'm going to trim this down a bit. Doing this very scientifically, as you can tell. All right, so let's see how that hangs. It's a little bit cattywampus, but I'm not going to worry about it too much yet. All right, so that's a good length for that, and this needs to go see if that is a good length. You can see how scientific I'm being about all of this. I think that is a good length, so I'm going to go ahead and, because I want these buttons to kind of, and I'm sorry, I'm pulling this away from on camera so I can see it. Yes, I just need a dolly, just Hannibal Lecter style. Just don't let me even tell you what I want. Just watch my eyeballs and run away with my wallet. That is absolutely how that should be approached. All right. So the reason I took that off is because there was a little partial link of chain, and it was not working out the way I wanted it to. So let's see if that hangs the way I want it. Need to turn around that last piece because I'm good with it flipping around, but I also want it to I get that, Lori. I'm not allowed in the Container Store because the Container Store for me is just filled with optimism that if only I have the correct containers, then I will be able to transform my whole life. And that is lies and deceit. Because I have a container problem. I have a decorative container and a useful container problem. They're two separate problems. All right, that's a great length. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to come away from the stream. Julie, you managed to survive the Container Store? I'm very proud of you. Oh, you almost went, not, you didn't actually go. So, yes, I have been in the Container Store, and I'm actually allowed to be in the Container Store as long as I have someone in there with me who can serve as the voice of reason, which is actually my job title at work. But sometimes one can be the voice of reason and also need one. I am living proof. All right, so let's see. Does that face the way I want? It does. It doesn't matter, actually. I don't even care. So I've got my little tassel of buttons. So now I've got all the lengths of my chain where I want them. And yeah, reason is definitely not for everyone, I think. But, you know, someone who helps you live your best life is what I would call reason. One does not have to always be reasonable, just reasonable. Thank you, Keiko. I was inspired by something on Pinterest, but also took my own, because I don't do just a Pinterest project. I look at it and go, oh, I'm going to do my own thing. So I've got this cute little tassel necklace, and you can decide how many buttons you put on. You can decide the lengths, etc. You can't see that because it's blurry, because focal distance, but see? And so now all I have left is to put on the clasp at the back. And you can continue, if you prefer, you can continue to add the cute little pearls to just kind of tie into the front part of your necklace. Thank you. I am not going to do that at the back of the necklace, just because. Normally I would, but I don't have extra pearls over here with me, and we're just gonna show you how to do a double-ended wire wrap, which is a good thing, as Martha would say, as Snoop Dogg's partner would say. How much is everyone loving Snoop Dogg at the Olympics? Because I've always known that I just wanted him to narrate my life, and all of those wishes are coming true in everything that he does. He's just so cute. And if anyone has any questions about why Snoop Dogg is at the Olympics, he is so incredibly involved in youth sports and all kinds of youth outreach. He really is. He's great. So I'm going to say, if you have a problem with Snoop Dogg, you probably are on the wrong stream. That's what I'm going to say. Yes, he and Michael Phelps are basically twins. It's true. Exactly. You got to go through me first if you're going to have a problem with Snoop Dogg. And I think there's a line. There's a huge, long line of people willing to stand up for Snoop. All right, and I am going to make sure, because this is actually a clasp that does technically have an opening, I'm going to make sure with my chain nose that the opening is as small as possible. So it is not going to be easy for that wire to get out. There's going to need to be some sort of trauma for it to come out. All right, once again. Do my wire wrap loop. Wait till the chain consents to join with the wire. Make sure it clicks into place. The clicking into place is very, very important. So Keiko, what you would want to do in this case is just make sure that you use a clasp that doesn't have any openings. Or you can make a clasp, or you can just make sure it doesn't have any openings, or if it has an opening and you can't make one, if you do this to attach it to a soldered ring and then attach your clasp to that, then all is well. And you see, I don't have that much wire left, which means that I was pretty good about my estimation of about 1.5 feet or so is the amount of wire I used. So depending on how many buttons you put on and the size of the buttons, you might, and the size of the wire, because the size of your wire will also be dictated by your chain itself. This particular chain being a little curb chain, you want to make sure that you have little wire to go in your little curb chain. So I have a finished product. So here is my cute button necklace. And it's fun. It's really fun to make. I enjoy wire wrapping. I enjoy buttons, so this is a fantastic project for me. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. Does anyone have any questions for now? Because if not, we are going to come back at, are we still going to wait till, oh yeah, we do need to wait till 7:45 because we're making a couple of minor changes to the podcast. So in a little less than half an hour, we'll be right back here, Twitch TV/Beating Dream, and we will be recording our podcast. Tonight's podcast is all about secret spaces. So it's going to be really cool, and even Allison is going to be surprised by some of the information on the podcast. And we look forward to seeing you here then. If you have missed our podcast in the past, then you are more than welcome to listen to it or watch it. We have it on iTunes, Spotify, and also YouTube. And we record it on Twitch. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. Again, my name is Heather. I'm here from Beating Dreams in Dallas, Texas. Yes, I know there is a plurality here at the store, but not on the stream. And we won't go into details why that is true. Just a thing that happens sometimes. And yes, there is another Beating Dreams out there, and it's actually us. We just forgot passwords. So we're going to pretend that never happened, and we've always been Beating Dream. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the project, and we will be back here in less than half an hour to do our podcast. Tomorrow night, we are going to be doing another sale here at Twitch TV/Beating Dream at 6:30 Central Time, and Friday and Saturday we will have tutorials as well. It's freeform on Saturday, right? Yeah. Okay, freeform on Saturday. And thank you for being here. We will see you really soon.